Hi, I'm Michael DiSpezio and welcome. In this K-5 lesson in health, we're going to be looking at the spread of germs. The question that lies at the foundation of this lesson is, how can you reduce the spread of germs? But before we get into the lesson content, let's first see what you already know. I am going to be presenting a series of statements, and I need you to decide whether they are true or false. Okay, first statement. Germs are tiny living things that can be observed with a microscope. And that is true. Germs are very tiny. They are so small that we could not see them if we did not have a microscope, which increases our ability to see things by magnifying them. Okay, next statement. Germs can make a person sick. And that, as you may have experienced already, is true. Germs can make a person sick. Each germ can cause a different type of sickness, and we'll learn about that later in this lesson. There is no way to protect yourself from germs, true or false. And that is false. There are many ways that you can protect yourself from germs, and we'll be looking at several of those ways later in this lesson. And the final question, washing your hands is a good way to stop the spread of germs. And that, as you probably know, is true. Washing your hands is a very good way to stop the spread of germs, because when you wash your hands with soap and water, you remove the germs that have landed on the surface of your skin, and it's less likely that you will bring them up to your mouth or your nose, where the germs can get inside of your body and cause an infection. I'd like you to take a look at this picture right now, and I need you to either think or to write down a caption for this image that includes the concept of how germs may spread from one person to another. Look at that image. It's a great picture. You can see that that young woman is sneezing, and she's sending out a spray of tiny droplets. In fact, that's what my caption would include. I would say that this woman is sneezing, and as she sneezes, she spreads many droplets into the air, and some of those droplets might contain germs. So what is a germ? A germ is a tiny living thing that can cause someone to get sick. And there's many different types of germs. I said that they were small, but how small are they? Well, they are so small that you need a tool. And a tool is something that scientists use to improve their senses. You need a microscope so that we are able to see germs. Now, have you ever heard of bacteria? I bet many of you have. Bacteria are a type of germ that can cause many different types of illnesses. Different bacteria can cause different types of sicknesses. Now, what do bacteria look like? They have many different shapes, and here we have some bacteria that are infecting the skin, and they are causing a skin infection. And the bacteria are those yellow round objects that you can see in this picture taken with a microscope. If we were to enlarge the bacteria, you can see that these bacteria are spherical, and they have a structure to them. But how big are these bacteria? I need you right now to imagine the head of a pin. Think about how small the head of that pin is. Now, if we were to take a bacteria, and here we have an illustration of one, and shrink it down to its actual size, we'd be able to place over 1,000 bacteria end to end across the head of a pin. That's how small bacteria are. Now, what other illnesses are caused by bacteria? There's an illness that you might have had called an ear infection. And ear infections can be caused by bacteria that get inside of your ear and cause illness. Another common bacteria that you might have had are the bacteria that cause strep throat. And that's a very painful condition. And if you've had strep throat, you know that it's really hard to swallow. It is very, very painful. And that is caused by a different type of bacteria. Other bacteria can cause food poisoning. These bacteria live in food. And when you eat the food, the toxins, the poisons that the bacteria manufacture can then affect you and cause food poisoning. There's another type of bacteria that can cause the illness called Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is transmitted by the bite of an organism called a tick. So if a tick gets on you and bites you, it can transfer the bacteria that causes Lyme disease into your body, and you can come down with that sickness. Now, there's many, many more types of bacteria. There's many more types of bacterial germs that can cause sicknesses. These are just a few. I've got a question for you. What type of germ is much, much smaller than bacteria? Think about it. I bet some of you know. And that type of germ is called a virus. And a virus is very, very different from a bacteria. In fact, it has a much, much simpler structure. And it is so much smaller. You know how much smaller it is? We'll talk about that in a second. But we'll talk about that in terms of the flu virus. If you've ever had the flu or influenza, this shows a very enlarged illustration of what the flu virus looked like. And you can see that this flu virus is also spherical. It is also round. Now, how big is that flu virus? I need you to think of the head of the pin again. And here is that pinhead. And if we were to take that flu virus and shrink it down, that picture will shrink it down to its actual size, we'd be able to place over 10,000 flu viruses end to end across the head of a pin. They are unbelievably small, very, very tiny. So how do you get the flu? How do you get influenza? Well, you can become sick with the flu if you are infected with the flu virus. So in order to come down with the disease, with the illness, you need to be infected with the germ that causes that illness. How does the flu virus spread? The flu virus travels mostly in droplets that move through the air. And here are some illustrations that represent these droplets. So you can see that these liquid droplets have inside of them the flu viruses. And you can become infected with them if you inhale these droplets, or if you touch a surface on which these droplets had fallen, and your fingers become infected with the virus. And if you touch your mouth, then you might infect yourself with that germ. Now, how are the infected droplets spread? These infected droplets are spread when people who have the flu, people who are infected with this germ, when they sneeze, when they cough, or they even speak. And when they do that, they release these droplets that travel in the air, and you can inhale them, or if the droplets fall on a surface, you can touch that surface and transfer those droplets to yourself. So how can you reduce the spread of these and other germs? Well, one way is to cover up when you cough or sneeze. So you can use a tissue or a napkin You can even sneeze into your elbow. This way you reduce the spread of those droplets which might contain the germs. Also, it's important to wash your hands with soap and water, and do that well. Do that for at least 20 seconds. And make sure you scrub between your fingers and on the top and the bottom parts of your hand. This is important to do when you touch surfaces that may have germs on them, or if you sneeze or cough. Remember, you can get those germs on your own hands, so make sure that you wash them. Or if you go to the bathroom, make sure you wash your hands well. This way you can reduce the spread of germs. You can also distance yourself from others, especially people who show the symptoms of being ill. And remember, people who are infected with certain germs may not even show symptoms, but they can certainly spread that disease. Now, scientists say that 6 feet is a good distance to separate yourself from others who might be sick or might be spreading germs. And finally, you can reduce the spread of germs by wearing some sort of face covering. Now, the face covering does 2 things. One, it can limit the spread of germs if you were to cough out or sneeze germs. This way, the face covering contains those germs and it prevents you from infecting others. But you know, face coverings can also stop germs from getting to you. It can be a physical barrier that can protect you from inhaling germs that might be in droplets in your surroundings. So there you have it. A lesson on the spread of germs. In summary, germs are tiny living things that can make you sick. In fact, they are so tiny that we need a microscope to observe them. There are different types of germs, and each type of germ can cause a different type of illness. Some germs can be transferred in droplets that are spread when someone sneezes, coughs, or even speaks. And finally, there are ways to reduce the spread of germs, such as covering up when you sneeze or cough, washing your hands and washing them well, and wearing a face covering. That's it for this lesson, and I'd like to thank you all for participating. If you'd like to find out more about what I'm up to when it comes to science education and the spread of germs, please visit my Twitter at @DiSpezio. Or if you'd like to learn more about science, science activities, and education, join us at #HMHScience. I'm Michael DiSpezio, and thanks so much for being with me.